Hey everyone, this is Brian Ferguson. I know if you're watching this that you're enjoying the Bumps and Thumps podcast. In order to continue the podcast and get the guests on that everyone wants to hear about, we need support from listeners like you. There are a few ways you can do this. One is going to anchor.fm, which will be on the bottom of your screen here, and click the support button. There you can make a monthly contribution to support the podcast. There's also, we have a Teespring store. We have a link down at the bottom of the screen as well for that. And we have products such as t-shirts like this one I'm wearing, backpacks, glassware, and other great items for you to purchase. Those purchases go directly back into the podcast and get on guests that require financial compensation. Thank you again for your support. Go to those websites and support our podcast, and we will continue to bring the guests that you want to hear about, past and present. And thank you for your support and enjoy the podcast. Thank you for joining another edition of Bumps and Thumps, the talk of wrestling. I'm Brian Ferguson. My guest today has been a true fan of professional wrestling since she was a child. She's a lifetime member of the Cauliflower Alley Club, the Benevolent, say that for me, please.
Benevolent
coordinator and advisory board chair for the Cauliflower Alley Club, and works for a major U.S. bank in the United States here. Ladies and gentlemen, it's my pleasure to introduce Ms. Darla Staggs. Darla, thank you for coming on the show. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Brian, for having me. I'm very honored.
I'm sorry about that tongue twister. That word just gets me. I don't know why. So I apologize for that.
That's a hard word to say.
So, again, I reached out to you and you responded very quickly, and I really appreciate it. And we have some friends in common here that I found out today with George Shire.
Yes.
Great guy. Love him. I have him on here whenever I can, and a wealth of knowledge. So, and he talks very highly of you. So,
well, I love George. We've been friends for over 40 years.
Yeah.
And today when we talked, he told me, I haven't seen him, of course, with the pandemic and then with his wife having medical issues. I haven't seen him in a couple years. So he promised me today that we would get together soon and go out to dinner.
That'd be nice. Yeah.
So hopefully we make it work.
Yeah, there you go. I hope so. So, all right, let's get into it a little bit. I said that you were been a fan since you were a child. So tell us a little bit about you growing up, where you grew up at, your childhood.
Well, I grew up in the St. Louis, Missouri area.
Okay.
So I am a NWA fan, a Sam Mushnick fan, and Larry Matisick fan. I like to tell this story. So the first match that I ever went to, I was 9 months old.
Oh, wow.
It was at Kuhl Auditorium. And I saw Pat O'Connor beat Dick Hutton for the NWA title. I, however, do not remember.
Wow.
But of course, my mom and dad always loved to tell that story. My mom said that when Pat won, she said, my dad took off with me in his arms and ran down around ringside and came back. And she said, what in the world were you doing? And he says, I don't know. I was just too excited.
That is an amazing story that you were there. I mean, you were a baby, but you were there for that historic event. That's a neat story.
So my parents were both wrestling fans. Grandparents on both sides were wrestling fans.
Oh,
so
wow.
I didn't have a chance, but my grandma and grandpa, they took me as a little girl. They had season seats, and I don't know if you've ever been there or not, but we had our seats were right on the aisle where the wrestlers came down. Okay. And my grandma always had the end seat because she wanted to touch them on the back when they walked by. But anyway, so we went as a kid every time they had them, and then as I got older, I met people over there, met friends, and I started going with a gal. I started cosmetology when I was a junior in high school.
Okay.
And one day I was sitting there looking at a wrestling magazine, and this girl walks up to me. She was older student, and she said, "Do you like wrestling?" I said, "Oh my gosh." I said, "I love wrestling." And she said, "I date Jack Briscoe." She said, "If your parents will let you go with me the next time he's in town, I'll introduce you." And I'm like,
Oh,
yeah, right. Because to me, these guys were like movie stars.
yeah.
So sure enough, she took me. I met Jack, and he was the first wrestler that I became friends with, and that started it. I started going. I went to the Chase, never missed it. Became friends with Larry Madisick. He was one of my closest friends, and
Yeah.
I still can hardly even talk about him. I was with him the day before he passed away,
Oh,
but I love wrestling to this day.
yeah. I'm with you. Unfortunately, my parents were not fans. My grandpa, I mean, I was real up, and he would sit me on his lap. I don't remember this. He died when I was about 2 years old, but he would sit me on his lap on Sunday and watch All Star Wrestling, Vern Gagne's All Star Wrestling. And I guess I must have enjoyed it because I have a fascination with it to this day. And well, you can see my podcast room.
I see that.
Yeah, I absolutely adore it like you. So I understand. I got the bug early too. So you talked a little about cosmetology. Once you got out of high school, did you go to college and
I did not. I graduated from cosmetology, and then I worked in a beauty salon for a couple years, and it just wasn't for me.
yeah?
And um, I applied for a job with Mercantile Bank, and I got that. And then I was an employee with them for about 20 years. Then we were bought out by US Bank,
Okay.
and I've continued. And this year I celebrate 41 years as an employee with them.
Wow. That's that's amazing. That's a long time.
It's a long time, and
Yeah,
I love the company.
that's great. I mean, if you love what you do, that's what matters.
Yes.
So you've been a fan since birth. Did you do any traveling with, I mean, I shouldn't say with, but outside when you were in St. Louis area, did you go to other cards or other promotions, things like that?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I traveled. So I had a friend who lived in the Bloomington, Illinois area who
Mhm.
actually ran shows for Vern up in Illinois.
Mhm.
So we would travel to places like Peoria, and oh, I think we went to Chicago maybe once, several places up in the northern area of Illinois that he was running AWA shows for. So I got to see a lot of the AWA guys, and of course, since Vern was part owner in St. Louis, Sam also used a lot of his guys on his cards. I traveled regular to Kansas City into Memphis. Um, I was friends with a lot of the guys in the Kansas City area. One of them, and it's kind of funny since Pat, I saw him win the title as a baby.
Yeah.
I actually ended up becoming friends with him and his wife,
Yeah.
and traveled a lot to Kansas City and stayed at their home.
Oh,
So
wow.
those were always kind of cool things. And
Yeah.
then when I became a member of WFIA in 1979, which was Wrestling, let's see, Wrestling Fans International Association. And they went to different cities every year and had their convention, and then there would be wrestling shows. So my first one was 79 in Memphis, and I met Tommy, Tommy and Eddie Gilbert. And that was, Eddie had just started in the business.
Yeah.
And I became very close friends with them. I'm still friends with their family, and just visited with his mom a couple years ago. But yeah, so I did a lot of traveling to Memphis. I've traveled to Arkansas, Oklahoma.
Yeah.
So yeah, all over.
You mentioned Eddie Gilbert. I saw a few days ago, you had on your profile, updated your profile pics of Eddie Gilbert. And I talked to George a little bit. He said you guys were really good friends. And, you know, I knew Eddie. I didn't know him, but I remember Eddie when he was in the Mid-South UWF, when he was, you know, a heel, Hot Stuff International. And when he moved into WCW and all that. And I remember when he passed, and I was just so surprised because he was so young. And I didn't realize you guys were that good of friends until the other day. And then George had mentioned that. And let's just talk about him a little bit, about how he was outside of the ring. I know he was a baby face for a number of years, and then he was a heel, but outside the ring.
Outside the ring, he was one of the kindest guys you could ever meet. I mean, he would do anything for you. And without going into too many details, because I don't want to mention any names, but years ago, there was someone in the business who owed me quite a large sum amount of money that I had lent them. And they kept putting me off and putting me off. And one day, Eddie and I were talking, and I mentioned it to him. And he was pretty upset, to say the least. And he said, "Don't you worry about a thing." And he made some contacts, and I eventually got my money back. And if it hadn't been for Eddie, I would have never gotten it back. And you know, he was just so nice, and he was so friendly. I mean, he never met a stranger. And just to tell you something else real quick about him. So I don't know if you know Kurt Hennig's wife at all, Leonise.
I've just seen her on TV. I've never interacted with her.
Were friends, and when Eddie had went to, he was in New York working for Vince, and I think he had went somewhere, was going to be gone for like a month, and Kurt had just moved to the WWE, and they didn't have a place to stay yet. And Leonise was pregnant, I think, with their first child. And Eddie says, "You guys don't worry about a thing." He said, "I'm going to be gone for a month. You stay right here at my apartment and make yourself at home." So that's just the kind of guy he was.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, sounds like a great guy. You know, his whole, you know, most of his family was in the business, you know, his dad, his brother. You know, I just knew him towards the end, you know, because I was a kid when he was in the UWF, Mid-South. That's where I really, when everything started expanding in the mid 80s on television, and we got UWF in my hometown in Wisconsin there. And that's where I started seeing him. And I, you know, those guys played their parts to the T back then. I tell you what, when they were heels and when they're baby face, I mean, if they were heels, boy, they just made you so mad. I wanted to just get through the screen. Yeah.
My My grandma said to me one day after she knew we were friends, and after he became a heel, she said to me, she goes, Darla, I just can't stand him. I hate him. She says, I don't even know how you can still be friends with him. I looked at her and I said, Grandma, he does the job well, doesn't he? Like, what are you talking about?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Those days, unfortunately, are past. Unfortunately,
Yeah.
but getting into the Cauliflower Alley Club. How? I mean, I obviously you've been to a number of those conventions every year. How did you get more involved, being the coordinator and the vice chair for the charity? And
Well, I started going to Cauliflower in 2004,
okay,
and I don't know if you know the name Jim Melby or knew him.
I know George received an award in honor of him and explained to that who he was. So yes, I am aware.
So Jim and I were very close friends, and we were talking, and he actually was the one responsible for talking me into going. So my first one was 2004. I have not missed one since. I am now a lifetime member.
Yeah.
And about 2 years ago, well, it'll be 2 years in July, I got a phone call from one of the ladies who was working with them, and she says, Darla, I want to talk to you about something. I said, what's that? And she said, and she had been the Benevolent Fund chairperson, and she had just got a different position with the club. And she asked me if I would be interested in it. And I said, oh, I said, I don't know if I would be interested in doing anything like that or not. She said, you think about it and you get back to me. I don't need to know right away. Well, first person I called was Herb Simmons, because he's my go-to guy,
Yeah.
if I need advice. I said,
Yeah.
Herb, what should I do? I said, I'm not sure I want to get involved this much. And he said, Darla, he said, you do it. He said, that is an honor to be asked. And he said, I think you would be good at it. He said, you have a heart. And he said, I think you should give it a try. So I did, and I have fallen in love with the club even more. It's a great work to see what they are doing. I've always supported CAC, but now that I've worked with them and I see how things are and what they're doing,
Yeah.
it's, my heart is really in it, and I love it. We have been able to help so many people, and sometimes I hang up the phone from talking to these people,
Yeah.
and I just sit here and cry for a while.
Hmm.
It's just sad what happens to some of them.
Yeah, I can imagine. Like back in the 70s, 80s, 60s, even those guys didn't make. I mean, they made good money if they were in the upper echelon, but not what these guys are making now. I mean,
No.
and if you didn't save or you get hit hard times, it's yeah. I
And
I don't know.
these people who tell me wrestling's fake, I just want to punch them.
Yeah, I'm
Of
with you.
course, we all know that the end result is predetermined. They
Yeah,
know who's going to win.
yeah.
But if these people would see the shape that
Hmm.
most of these people are
Yep,
in now,
yep,
it's the abuse
um,
they take on their body is
yep.
not.
I was with Greg Gagne and Jim Brunzell at Crusher Fest back in October.
You
And
were?
yeah, yeah. I went up there and I I talked to them because I've done podcasts with them. So I stayed in the same hotel with them and all that. And we got to chatting, uh, during after the events, in the evening and stuff. And the stuff that those guys gone through, physically. Jim just had, I guess I saw it on Facebook, shoulder surgery.
Yeah.
He's in his early 70s, and Greg's got pretty bad back issues, and he's in his early 70s. And, when people say it's fake, I just, I kind of like you, I just get kind of like, because some people are like, I can't believe you watch that fake stuff and all that. And I'm like, you know what? I enjoy it. I said, I guarantee if you got in the ring for 2 minutes, you would have a different opinion of how fake it is, because they do hit each other. I mean, not to the extreme that it's brought on, but when you get slammed so many times or get kicked so many times, it takes a beating on your body. And I understand totally what you're talking about. So,
and about Jim's shoulder surgery, I saw a picture of him. Oh my gosh, except for the sling he's wearing, you wouldn't even know that he had surgery. He looks amazing.
Yeah. No, I saw the pictures, like, he looks great other than that sling on his arm. Yeah.
I love those guys. And like I said, I haven't got to see him. It's been a couple years since I've seen him, but
great.
I that I'm supposed to be having dinner with Greg in July. We already have plans because I go to Waterloo, Iowa every year for the Dan Gable Hall of Fame.
Yes.
And Barbara comes up, and JJ Dillon and his daughter. So they all fly into Minneapolis and drive down with me. And,
that's nice.
So Barbara and Pam have both talked to Greg and told him that when they come in town in July, we're getting together.
Yeah.
Dinner. So that'll be fun.
Yeah. You know what's funny? You mentioned those two again, that I never met him in person. I've only interacted with him like you and I are right now through Zoom and through podcasts. But when I went to the Crusher Fest, I texted him, say, hey, I'm here at the hotel. We met up later in the evening prior to their first event. They welcomed me in like I'd known him for 20 years. And
that's how they
and then the next morning we had breakfast, talked to me for a while. And I said, I'll meet you over there later, because they had to get going, and had dinner that night with those two. Just great, down to earth guys. And it made me feel so good, because I'm like a true fan. I was a little kid when they were the High Flyers, and I was kind of starstruck, I'll be honest, but they treated me like I'd known them 20 years.
That's how most of the guys are. And
yeah,
I have always, the High Flyers have always been my number one favorite tag team, and they always
George told me that too.
Did he?
Yeah, he said Eddie Gilbert was your favorite wrestler because you were really good friends, and your favorite tag team was the High Flyers.
Yep, they sure were. So I hope that Brian Blair doesn't see this to know that my favorite team was Greg and Jim, and not Jim and Brian.
And a tiebreaker is the Killer Bees, right?
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. All right. Well, I want to talk to you about an award you received in 2011. I did a little research, and this award, I didn't know what it was until I had to look it up. It's called the Red Bastien Friendship Award. And the criteria is that the nominee will be someone who has never worked in any major capacity in the pro wrestling industry or been under contract in a major wrestling promotion, but should have demonstrated by deed and word over time a commitment to the people and the welfare of the industry. The nominee must have attended at least 3 Cauliflower Alley Club conventions. Now that's a pretty esteemed award for that's I was kind of surprised, because I remember Red Bastien. I mean, a little bit. He was a really good wrestler, really good guy. But for that, and you received that, that's pretty amazing. And this is prior to you even going to work for them.
Correct.
So that tells me a lot about your character.
Well, thank you.
And that's a very high prestige honor to receive that. And what was that like for you when you found out you're getting this award? I mean, you had to be like overjoyed, probably tears running down your face from joy. And
Oh my gosh. No, you have got to hear this story. I had no idea that I was getting this award. So 2011, the first thing was that the Gilberts were going to be there because they were getting the family award that year. And Rick Martel, he was honored, and he is another one of my very favorites. So the guy who was working on the board at the time, I don't know if you know Morgan Dollar,
no.
we're very good friends. And I kept telling him, I said, it just can't get any better. I can't believe Rick Martel is going to be there. The Gilberts are going to be there. And, he just kept playing along with me.
Yeah.
Well, then I got an email one day. I don't even know who sent it to me, but they told me that they were going to give the Friendship Award to this Morgan Dollar. And I was so excited for him. They even went as far as made up a fake plaque with his picture on it.
Oh, wow.
And I said, I think myself, Joyce Postjan, and Wendy Weaver, who was Penny Banner's daughter, should be there to present it to him. Well, I played right into it. So they're all like, okay, so we're up there to give these speeches. And they had me go last. And so I got up there and I made my little speech about Morgan and blah, blah, blah. And then they called him up there to accept the award. So he's standing there and he's like, well, we've been telling a bunch of lies the last few months. He said, this friendship award is not actually going to me. And he turns around and looks at me and he goes, honey, come over here because this is your award.
Oh,
I was
wow.
in awe. I started crying. And
Yeah.
of course, there were several people who were in on it. And so it was a surprise. It
Yeah.
was a shock. I was so excited. And then afterwards, I can remember the very first person that congratulated me was Rockin' Robin.
Rockin'
And
Robin. Yeah.
she was there that year because she was honored, and I had never met her before. And she came over to me and introduced herself, and she said, honey, she said, your face was just priceless. And she said, what an honor it was for you, and what a privilege it is to know that you have been friends with so many wrestlers.
Yeah.
That was kind of special too.
That's great. That's a great story.
Yeah. So I had no idea. It was a complete surprise, and they really got me. But to even go to the extreme to make up a fake plaque.
It's pretty hardcore.
Yeah, they were, but it was good. And then Morgan asked me afterwards, he said, so, you've been telling me for months that it couldn't get any better. What do you think now? So that was a pretty cool honor.
That's a great story. I mean, that tells a lot about you, and if they went through all that trouble, that means they really loved you, respected you, and yeah, that's great.
And Brian, I have become friends with so many of the wrestlers,
Yeah.
and it's an honor for me to be considered a friend.
Yeah.
And these people are like family to me.
Yeah.
I love it.
You mentioned Rick Martel, one of your good friends. I mean, I like that guy. I think he was a great champion. I don't think he gets the credit that he deserves.
I hear a lot of people say that, and I agree. I loved him when he was in the AWA.
Yeah.
I didn't care for his gimmick in
the model. Yeah, no.
I guess it worked for him, and Yeah, we were friends when he was in the AWA, and he worked a lot in St. Louis.
Mhm.
And I actually met him through Hulk Hogan because
Oh,
I was friends with him. So I started picking Rick up when he would come into St. Louis. I'd pick him up at the airport. We'd go to the matches, and then I'd take him back to the hotel. And everybody stayed there and drank. And then we usually went to Denny's and had breakfast. But he was a super, super nice guy. And I don't. It's kind of funny because Rick had been in the United States for years, but he still it was still sometimes hard to understand him, and he still didn't know a lot of our lingo, but he was just always a super nice guy. And
yeah.
I hadn't seen him since gosh, the 80s. And then in 2011, when he was at CAC, I got reacquainted with him, got to
Yeah.
talk to him. Of course, I had to refresh his memory who I was because I had lost a lot of weight since he saw me,
Okay.
and he didn't remember me. But when I told him who he was, he remembered, and he said, "You were always my best friend when I was in St. Louis." So that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, I always loved him. He was a
Yeah.
good guy.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't think he got the credit he deserved. All these,
Yeah.
you have so many friends in the business. Um, you guys keep up pretty frequent as much as you can. I mean, calls, Facebook
Um,
messaging. I mean, I know with COVID, it's a little bit harder now, but
Yeah, some of them I do. I mean, by working on CAC, I keep in pretty close contact with
yeah.
Brian. We talk or text pretty frequently. I hear, once in a while from Jerry Briscoe.
Mhm.
Um, I hear from David Schultz once in a while. Here's a story about this guy.
Let's hear
So,
it. Dr. D.
and I love this guy, and I haven't known him that long. So a few years ago, Herb said to me, he said, and this was before Larry passed away, and Herb told me, he says, we're bringing Dr. D in for our May show this year. And I'm like, Herb, what is wrong with you? Nobody likes this guy. I've never heard anything good about him. He's a jerk. And I called Larry. I said, Larry, I said, what the heck is wrong with Herb? And he starts laughing. He goes, Darla, he thinks it's going to be great. He wants to bring David in. So I'm not arguing with him. So he brings him in, and I went into town for it, and Barbara and I had hung out that day, and we get to the thing, and they introduced me to him, and I'm like, okay, whatever. And we talked a few times, and then we went out to eat afterwards, and I'm like, okay, this guy's not so bad. And then a couple years later, they honored him at CAC. So he was at CAC. Him and his wife showed up, and he remembered me, and we talked, and he was such a good guy.
Yeah.
And I'm friends with him on Facebook. And
Yeah.
a couple years ago, I had a pretty major back surgery, and he found out, and he got my phone number from Barbara, and he called me. And I'll tell you what, when I had my back surgery,
Mhm.
he was one of my big supporters.
That's
And
great.
so now on special holidays and occasions, I'll get a text message from him
Yeah.
telling me, Merry Christmas, whatever.
That's
So
nice.
it's kind of cool. So I have to recant that he's a bad person, that he's a jerk, because I really, really like him.
Yeah.
He's a good guy.
Yeah. That's great.
No, the horror stories, I don't believe them anymore.
There you go.
I do believe he slapped John Stossel, though.
Oh, yeah, it's on TV. It's video. Yeah. That
Yeah,
was, yeah. That's,
yeah, but he's a super nice guy.
yeah.
And I don't, you probably aren't aware of this unless somebody has told you, but I'm sure you know who Sapphire is.
Yeah. Yeah.
She was my very best friend until the day she died.
Oh, I did not know. Okay, that's interesting.
She was one of the first people I met when I started going to wrestling at the Chase,
Okay.
and we became very good friends. I mean, she came to my parents' house. We traveled a lot to get all my trips to Kansas City and Memphis.
Yeah.
She was usually my travel buddy.
Oh,
And
okay.
I talked to her on the phone the night before she passed away,
Yeah.
and she was complaining of indigestion. And next day she had a heart attack.
Oh gosh.
She died, but it was kind of funny. So when I mean, she knew my whole family. They
Yeah.
just loved her. And when my grandpa passed away, her and another friend of ours, Kathy, came to the funeral. And
Mhm.
after the funeral service, the pastor went up to my mom because, Granite City at that time was predominantly white.
Mhm.
And my pastor said to my mom, he said, it sure was nice for Ted's nurses to show up for his funeral.
Oh,
And
no.
said, nurses, who you talking about? He said, those two ladies, my mom said, those are not his nurses. They are like part of our family.
Oh, oh gosh.
But yeah. Oh my gosh. She was the best.
Yeah. I remember her with Dusty and WWF.
Yeah.
Always dancing with Dusty and the polka dots. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. She got her start with Herb. She
I,
wrestled she wrestled for Herb
okay.
as Princess Dark Cloud, and she was also the first female referee in the state of Missouri.
Oh, okay. See, I'm learning things here. We're learning things here tonight. See?
Oh my gosh, you would have loved her. She was awesome.
Yeah. I can imagine. I mean, she was quite entertaining on TV with Dusty.
Yeah, I used
Uh,
to always tell her, Neat, you need to teach him how to dance because he just doesn't have
the son of a plumber don't know how to dance.
it.
Oh, okay. Well, what are you up to now? I mean, you're talking about Waterloo in July. Is there any other events you plan on attending or
Um,
going to?
I will be going home in May for Herb's big show.
Okay.
We probably will be going back in June because this book that Ed Wheatley wrote, Wrestling at the Chase, a few months ago. It came
Yes.
out in
Yeah. Yeah.
October.
Yep.
Well, now they're doing a documentary film, and I'm in the film. They
All
called me
right.
and wanted to interview me, so I was home in August and went over to Channel 9 Studios and did my interview. And
Wow.
that's supposed to be released in June, so I'll probably get to go home for that. And
Good.
then Waterloo in July, and then Cauliflower is in September. And as of that, that's all the wrestling events I have on the schedule as of right now. But as in wrestling, it's always subject to
Subject
change.
to change. Card subject to change. Yes.
Yep. So, but that's my definite plans for right now.
Well, good. I'm so glad I had you on here. It's been a joy. I mean, just talking to you, you just seem so, I don't know, down to earth, pleasant, friendly.
I try
Um,
to be.
yeah, no, you are. Uh, so I appreciate you coming on here tonight
Well,
and talking to us. And I try to, like I said, not just reach out to wrestlers, but promoters, fans, and when I saw your name and what you've done and won that award and you've never worked in the business. I mean, that's pretty amazing that you have done all that you have done and never worked in the business. I mean,
no,
that's pretty amazing.
I never have. I'm just a true wrestling fan
Yeah.
that loves it. And I still love it. I don't really go or
I
watch
was going to
WWE.
ask you, do you watch it very much nowadays or?
I don't.
Yeah.
I mean, I did for a while, but I
Mhm.
don't really anymore. I was a big John Cena fan, but
Yeah.
eh, I'm kind of over that.
Yeah.
And I do go. There's a local promotion up here in Minnesota that I go to, Steel Domain Wrestling.
Okay.
Um, it's a good promotion. They do a lot of try to do old school,
Mhm.
and it's promoted by Ed Hillier and Mark Koval. They do an awesome job with it. Ken Resnick is involved.
Oh, okay. Ken
He
Resnick.
does the play-by-play for 'em. So it's a good time, and I sell tickets for 'em.
Oh,
So
there you
that
go.
yeah, that's fun. I get to meet a lot of the fans and know them. So
Yeah.
that's cool. We run shows once a month. In fact, our next show is this Friday. So
All
it'll be
right.
good. Yeah.
Well, good
Yeah.
for you. That's great. All right. Well, I'm going to leave it at that. I want to thank you for coming on the
Thank you so
show.
much for inviting me.
Oh, my pleasure. Ladies and gentlemen, Ms. Darla Staggs, I appreciate it. Thank you. And folks, thank you for listening. If you're watching, thank you. And please subscribe, and we will talk to you soon.
Thank you, Brian.